What's up, crew? Welcome back to Libertalia Game Supply. Today we're going to take a look at this Ken and Jen Runick Mutation deck. Initially, when I saw this back mutation card, I thought it was an interesting idea for Runicks just because they have so many different levels in the extra deck, and so I was kind of looking through stuff, trying to see what could be summoned off of back mutation that's like a really good like stun card or stall card or floodgate type monster, and nothing really was coming up that I was liking. And then within like the next day, I believe these got released, both of which are level 3, and we do have a level 3 fusion target, and they are pretty good. Now, I don't know that the outrage that I'm seeing online is quite justified, because in order to play it reasonably, I mean, I guess they're warriors, so they're searchable off of Rhoda, which is at 1, but otherwise, this is not super consistent. You need a deck that draws a bunch like Runick or Dark World or something in order to consistently have these in your hand in order to make them viable turn 1 options. Otherwise, they just are there. Like, they're just kind of there. I guess you can use them on any turn, but the power is in being able to go first and then still have access to like your thrust and your talent and whatever. Now, that being said, this has been a really fun deck to play around with. So we've got the 3 Ken and the 3 Jen. Basically, if you're unaware, when they're on the field, you can activate effect to summon the opposite one to your opponent's side of the field, and then they have an effect when they get summoned over there. Because they activate an effect on your opponent's side of the field, it automatically makes your talent and your thrust live on turn 1 right away, and that's what makes these really good and why people are freaking out about them. When the Jen gets summoned to your opponent's side of the field, they have to discard a card. When the Ken gets summoned to your opponent's side of the field, your opponent, being you, the original summoner of the Jen in that instance, would draw 2 and discard 1. So it's like a tiny graceful charity almost, and that effect is super busted. In a deck like this where you don't need your normal summon, it's possible to pull off both effects. So you can summon the one, give them that one, draw 2, discard 1, play a little bit more, then use like the back mutation to summon the other one, to give them the other one, and then they have to discard 1, and that's pretty fun to pull off. But outside of that, they work as link materials and Xyz and Fusion, I suppose, also, but in this deck, I'm using them as link materials so you can get rid of them, and there's just a lot of interesting little interactions that these cards create, and so I wanted to build a deck around them. So we got the 3 of each. I don't think you can play less than that necessarily. The back mutation is also kind of a non-searchable 3 of. I suppose technically it's searchable off of thrust, except the thrust only becomes live because you've already used this effect, meaning you don't need the mutation anymore, and you get what I'm saying. So we got our package of 6 of these. We got the Sprite package that is normally kind of in Runicks, the triple blue, 1 red, 1 carrot, 1 jet. I didn't play the pixies because I didn't feel like that effect was going to be nearly as necessary in this deck, because we're just trying to combo hard and set up a bunch of negates. The Runick section of the deck is standard Runicks, the 1 Sprite starter, and then down here I guess is kind of different. So the triple back mutation, it's just Metamorphosis but in reverse. Tribute a fusion or synchro monster, special summon a monster with the same original level from your deck, return it to the hand in the end phase, and it's a once per turn. Now I think that this slots really nice into this deck. I was trying to think of ways that this could be played in like any deck, and I think the problem becomes there is that to make this live in any deck, you would need to then play a lot of non-searchable cards like instant fusion, ready fusion, stuff like that. Or you need to open up a combo to get to a level whatever synchro or fusion monster that then searches a monster out of your deck, and it's like going backwards. So I don't think this is quite as busted as I initially thought it was either, but it is still a really good card in the right deck. And then we have our 1 thrust, our double talents, and then a terraforming and an upstart goblin. And these are just secondary search targets for the thrust. So if you open the talents, we are playing 2, you might open 1, you can dig for them really easy in a Runick deck, whole lot of draw power. Then you would just search the terraforming to get to the fountain, or you just search the upstart goblin and it's like a 39 card deck, you know, that whole Patrick Hoban deal. Now you could get pretty creative with what you put here. You could probably go talents to 1, play you know, Raigeki, Lightning Storm, Dark Hole, Feather Duster, anything like that, whatever you want to play. You can even play some normal traps. You know, I had imperms in there for a little bit and took those out. So I think that this creates a pretty interesting way to build a deck that's not just the standard like going first and then hoping you're playing against hand traps or something. The extra deck here also gives you a lot of space to play around with, so I'm playing the double Hugin. I think that's pretty standard for Runicks. The 1 Moonin we don't have a target for. It's a level 3, and it's only there because if you open back mutation plus any Runick spell that isn't fountain, you have access to your Jen and then a draw 2, discard 1, or I guess the other way around. But if we're going first, we want the draw 2, discard 1, and we want to set up that nasty board. We've got the one Jerry Beans Wolf just to get that Runick Fountain back if you end up needing it. I've never really needed it. And then we've got the one Sleipnir. I still like this card as a interrupt on your opponent's turn, just to remove something big off the board to survive another turn. It's kind of just like a reusable dimensional prison, so a little bit of old school throwback there. For the Link lineup, we've got the one Sprin because it's standard, and then everything is kind of built around just opponent's turn summoning outside of that. So the one IP in order to put the Link monsters on your opponent's turn on board. The one SP Little Knight, just super good card. It's also a Link 2, so you can summon it well under the restrictions of the Sprite monsters. The Phoenix, you could probably cut this and play like anything you want, and that kind of goes for the Unicorn as well, even though that removal effect is pretty good. It is really easy, and you'll see in the test hands at the end of the video here, to summon a live Nightmare Griffin on your opponent's turn and just shut down all effects. Even if you were to, so theoretically, like if your opponent is playing these also, and you give them one and it's on their turn, they could use its effect to give you one also, at which point you could then just summon it to a zone that is not linked and they don't get the effect off of it. And, you know, whatever, anything, you know, Griffin's just a great floodgate monster, and so I wanted to try to fit that in there just because it's a stall deck and it's a mill deck, and we're just trying to survive as long as we can to burn them down to 0 cards. For the Xyz monsters, we've got the one Gigantic Sprite. It's really easy to summon it with its big 3200 body using a Hugin. I don't really use it for that. You don't have a battle phase, so you're not attacking with it, but it is an option. I am mostly using it because of that effect to special summon an extra body on board, so I would usually detach to special summon one of the sprites with the negate effect and leave it there, and then when you pass turn, as long as you have the IP on board, you have the option to have the bounce effect from the Sprind by still having a material on the Gigantic Sprite, and then you just use the Gigantic Sprite as a material to link summon with IP, or you just have it on board as like a material to use for the tribute for the Sprite negate effects, anything like that. You can just set up the board in whatever way you want, and it's got a lot of negates there. Then these other two are kind of whatever cards. You could even not play other Xyz monsters, play more Link monsters, whatever. I've got number 65 and Oni Bimaru in here. This guy works kind of similarly to the Sleipnir. You're just like, it's being annoying, removing certain pieces from them for a turn and just interrupting stuff when you can. This one I like just because it has a quick effect that interrupts on your opponent's turn, which you want access to in a deck like this. The only downside is it requires 2 dark monsters, which we do play. We've got the 3 blue and the Jet, and so you have access to those bodies if you're trying to summon this thing, but you could just as easily play like the Mannequin Cat or, you know, the Centuria, but once again, no battle phase. And then these are just some other stuff you can play. A lot of them are less good because they're outside of their archetype, and so most of their effect is unusable, but you could do it, you could play around with it. And then this was just other stuff that the Lightning Storm I didn't like, because this is built solely as going first. We cannot possibly do anything but going first. We want to go first. We're playing no hand traps, as you can see. We have the interrupts from the Runick monsters, but otherwise, go first, set up a nasty board, and pass. That's what we're going for. And so if you end up going second, you could side all this stuff in, but that was kind of the idea here. So go ahead and take a look at these test hands. Tell me what you think about this concept. I thought it was interesting. It still feels a little bit clunky, like a little bit unclean, but I'm going to keep working on it because this seems like a super fun idea, and I think you could steal some wins with this for sure. So test it out. Let me know what you think. Thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes here today. Happy deck building. I will see you in the next one. Have a good one. Goodbye.